Okay, welcome. So today is our second Bliss Techniques meeting of the week. Hope that's not too confusing. And today we're going to continue in our exploration of the, I'm eating hair apparently. We're going to continue in our exploration of Uddiyana Pranayama. And we're also going to possibly explore a few other things along with that. So first of all, let's talk briefly about what, just to be clear about what the intention of this meeting is, so that you can have the right expectation and you can then get the benefits. So as I said, well, first of all, in general, the intention of this program as a whole is to help you to uncover wholeness in your life so that you can really live in peace and wellness at all levels, so that you can know goodness in your body and in your mind and in your emotions and in spirit. And so that you can have a stable foundation from which to engage in experience. Because otherwise what happens is that we are tossed around by experience because we don't have that stable foundation. So our experience, comes and we think, oh, this is good experience. And so we have this up, and then another experience comes along and we says, this is a bad experience. And then we're down. So up and down, up and down. And we usually think down is bad and up is good. Because that's the association that we have, and that's what has been taught to us. But particularly, I find particularly in the further east one goes, from like Tibetan Buddhism and then Taoism, that there is this notion that is at first somewhat puzzling, I think, to most of us from the West, because they actually hold that, well, they will use words like joy or excitement or passion, and they will describe these as being problematic. So as I say, that's usually somewhat challenging for us, because we think, oh, those sound like great things. I could do with more passion and more excitement and more joy. I mean, who could have anything bad to say about joy? But the really, when you start to understand that the up and the down are these two polarities that are like two sides of a coin, so they go together. You can't separate them. You can't have up without down. It's not a possibility. Then you start to see, well, let's look at it a little differently. Maybe the problem isn't that just that we don't have enough up, that we don't have enough passion and excitement and joy. Maybe the problem is actually that we're pulled from center. Maybe the problem is that we lack stability. So if we start to understand it that way, then we can maybe have a better understanding of that more Eastern philosophy. And in my experience, it's very useful to start to understand that, because unwittingly, we, in our chasing after what we think of as good, and our rejection of what we think is bad, then we actually produce a lot of suffering for ourselves. But we don't know that we're doing it because we think, well, but good is good. I should be chasing after these desirable things because that's what makes life good. And if I didn't have that, this is where we usually get stuck. If I wasn't doing that, then I would sink into all the bad, or at the very least, my life would be flat, uninteresting, dull. So that kind of thinking is what keeps us on that, I call it, not so merry-go-round, because there we are, we're clinging to this churning, and we're feeling not well, but we keep on holding on to it because we think that we're doing the right thing. We can't see how it's possible that any other way could actually be the right way, because any other way would mean giving up on the thing that we're clinging to, which we think is the right thing. Or we think conversely, we think that if I was to give up on the clinging to the aversion to that which I fear, that means that then that thing would occur and that would be bad. Well, here's the thing about it is, in theory, it sounds true. In practice, it doesn't work. If you just take a look in your life, you'll see that that's true. It just doesn't work. So this is where we find ourselves, is in this situation where, and we find ourselves here over and over and over and over, that when we're really honest, we realize this thing that I've been doing, the way that I've been believing and perceiving, is not working out very well. But I'm terrified, really, absolutely terrified, not to do that, not to cling in that way, not to chase after what I believe is good and to try and avoid what I think is bad. So this is in my view, it's a very important, it's a very, very wonderful thing, actually, to find ourselves here. But usually when we find ourselves here, we think otherwise. We think this is bad. We feel anxious, afraid, uncomfortable. And so we think, oh, this is bad. I don't like this. But I want to propose to you that we reframe that, because it will really, this one simple and not simple reframing, when taken sincerely to heart and put into practice in a lived way, every single day of your life, moment to moment, will absolutely, I can guarantee you, it will transform your life in ways that will at once delight you and surprise you, because it won't be what you thought, but it will be so much more delightful. So yet again, I've gone off on a tangent, but I do think that's a good reminder, and it sets the tone for our exploration today. So that can be the theme of our exploration, because really, what Bliss Techniques is really aiming to do is to provide the direct experience of the bliss that is the fundamental goodness that is here. So connecting that with what was just said, we see that we make the mistake of thinking that bliss is the thing that we think is desirable, because we had some experience in the past and we said that must be bliss. And so that's our reference point. And because that's our reference point, we keep missing the actuality of the bliss that's here, and then we fall into this trap that I've already described, where we think, but this bliss that's here, this couldn't be any good, because only that bliss is good. That other thing that I have to chase after, that thing that comes and goes, that's the thing that's so desirable. This thing, not so much. And so we keep It's like we keep not noticing it and rejecting it, chasing after this thing that we think is what's desirable. But what we're not seeing is that that's keeping us bound in this, on this vicious cycle of suffering. So the actuality of the bliss is that is so different and yet so much more wonderful than what we thought. So that I can promise you. But in order to really allow ourselves to become intimately familiar with that, we have to be willing to meet it. And that means, of course, well, I say, of course to me, maybe not of course to you, I don't know, but that means that we have to be willing to welcome that which has been rejected. So in truth, we actually have to kind of turn everything on its head. Instead of chasing after what we think is desirable and rejecting what we think is undesirable, we can actually in some way do the opposite of that. And there's a whole system in Buddhism that I think is very wonderful, that addresses this very clearly and practically. And so that is something that is down the line. I'm somewhat eager to visit in the context of Bliss Techniques, where just to kind of paint the picture of where we're kind of headed with this. First of all, let me pull it back and we'll just say so the purpose of Bliss Techniques is that you discover the bliss that is here, that is inherent, natural, that doesn't need to be gotten. It doesn't need to be produced. It doesn't need to be generated. It doesn't need to be created. It already is. It's uncreated, and that's in a sense its true power, because that which is not created cannot be destroyed. So this is very, very important. And this, please take a moment and let that in and really reflect on that and notice what a relief that can be. So just close the eyes and notice how it is that you are struggling and chasing after things, moment to moment, even up to now. There's been this struggle, this chasing, trying to get rid of something and get to something else. I want to get rid of this uncomfortable sensation. I want to get to that other sensation that I think is the good one. I want to get rid of this churning of the mind that feels so awkward and uncomfortable and agitated, and I want to get to that other thing that I think would be desirable. So it's always going on. And notice what a relief it would be if you could actually directly realize that what is here underneath all of it, before all of it, during all of it, and after all of it, eternally, uncreated, cannot be destroyed, is a fundamental goodness. Wouldn't that be a relief to know that the underlying reality is fundamentally good, pure, whole, wholesome? Now we don't fully believe that. We have doubts and fears and concerns, but that, just for a moment, set that aside. That's why we have to have the techniques. But before we apply the techniques, we want to recognize that to some degree we can glimpse, maybe really truly it is so that what is here actually is fundamentally good, so that if I let go, it wouldn't be a disaster. It wouldn't be that I would fall into this deep pit of endless suffering, but actually I would fall into grace. So that is a really essential recognition that we want to cultivate. We want to have that as often as possible. So, at least once a day, if not more often. So that is the purpose of the Bliss Techniques program, is that we can touch that, connect with that, recognize that, and then B, we can realize it. And that means that the realization means that we can actually have an uninterrupted revelation of that truth. So that this might be perceived differently at different levels by different individuals, but it's been described, for example, as, well, uncreated. So this is Ajata Vada, which Ramana Maharshi described as his experience. The language is funny there, but I don't know any other way to say it. But it doesn't have, but then the mind starts to make some story about what that might mean. And so it doesn't have to mean what you think it means. It's just, we want to understand, though, that it's an unbroken realization of that underlying reality. So that whether that is the recognition of eternal stillness and nothing is created, or even if it's the perception of there is creation, but this creation or this movement or this flow or this energy is an expression of that underlying bliss. It's not a fearful bad thing. It's bliss. It's wonderful. So this is the aim. This is what's possible. And I want you to know that, because otherwise we can sort of do something and not be clear on why we're doing it, or if it's working, or we don't really have some clear path. And I want you to understand that this is possible. So even in one instant right now, when you are able and willing to just let go and recognize this fundamental goodness that's here, let it have you, let it hold you, fall into it just for one moment. When you allow that, this is what is called, in Sanskrit terms, it's a Samadhi. So Samadhi means that it is I would equate it to a divine union. So there's no separate self who is joining with something, some object that's being joined with. There's not self and other and an active union. Rather, it is the direct revelation of oneness. So this is, we could say that it is, we could describe it in many ways, but we could say, for example, rather than there being observer, an act of observing and the observed, there's a recognition in this moment that there's simply observing. And this simply observing is bliss. Notice how full and yet simultaneously empty it is. Notice that it is absolute peace, completeness. There's nothing needed. So this is available to all of us, and it's a blessing that it is. So, we can have a moment of gratitude for that. Because imagine if you couldn't recognize that. Imagine if you so completely forgot about yourself that you couldn't wake up, that you were doomed to an eternity of ignorance. That the fact that is not true is something to be grateful for. The fact that, and not only is it not true, but you can actually, in this moment, you can directly recognize what is true. So it's a wonderful thing. So this, at least according to me, this is samadhi. Now, samadhi is um, it's not a religious experience. It's not a culturally specific experience. It's um, not even an experience of an individual. It's a universal reality. So I point this out maybe for a couple of reasons, but one reason is because I want you to recognize that sometimes fears can creep up. Like, is this okay? Is this safe? Am I doing something wrong? Now, if you don't have these fears, good for you. But for many of us, these kinds of fears can creep up, like, I don't know, is this okay? Maybe it's against my religion. Maybe it's against my culture. Maybe it's against my individual self somehow. Somehow, it's somehow maybe, I don't know, it's the work of the devil or something. Well, so you want to see, no, this is a universal truth. It's a universal reality. It's not owned by anyone. It's just to see that, I am. It's not I am God. It's I am. Just to see that I am is not, there's no separate I who is. It's I am that I am. So then this is, as I say, samadhi, but this is traditionally there are various categories of samadhi, and I'm not going to pretend that I know really that I understand them all. But there is what is called sarvi kalpa samadhi, which I believe means, generally, I think you can understand these as like they're somewhat progressive. So you have maybe this one moment, this one momentary glimpse would be a sarvi kalpa samadhi, because it seems that it's easily interrupted. The next thought comes, the next feeling comes, and the next memory comes, and the phone rings, something, you get some piece of mail, you get an email, whatever, and you're, oh my goodness, you've forgotten it completely. Well, okay. So we can just recognize, well, wow, this, so I glimpsed something. I glimpsed something wonderful, and then I seem to lose it. But good news, then we're told there's nirvikalpa samadhi, which is unbroken. Well, nirvikalpa samadhi is further delineated, I think, according to, like some at the low end, you say, well, I'm able to sustain this samadhi. So maybe, for example, you notice that, first you can just let go and you can glimpse this wholeness. But then the next thought comes and you're lost. You've grabbed on and there you go. You're off. Well, that's sarvi kalpa samadhi. Maybe I'm understanding the terms incorrectly. I've never had a teacher who I was able to ask for clarification on the terms. So I'm just using the terms as I best understand them. But to make a point, it's the terms being used, it doesn't really matter so much. It's just to see that there's this kind of progression. So you can kind of start to see, okay, what's the next step? Because I can have this glimpse, but then I'm lost with the next thought. Well, then maybe what's next, well, not even maybe, I'm going to suggest to you that what is next is, and you can see that this is possible now, maybe. Try it out. Just let go and notice that wholeness is here. It's not your wholeness. There's no one here separate from the wholeness. There's just simply this undivided wholeness. Inner and outer, self and other. It's all just one wholeness. And then you continue to just be aware. So consciously present. And you'll start to, and you can actually watch for the thought. So you're now, instead of just kind of waiting to be caught unawares by the next thought, you're now watching for the next thought. This is in line with our study of pranayama. I'll mention that it's suggested in this tradition that this particular function of mind, which they call manas, which is the thinking mind, is located, actually has a location in the body. We could say in the soma. So, because oftentimes if we think it's in the physical body, it's a confusion. They use this word body to refer to physical body, emotional body, thought body, energy body, so causal body. All these bodies, they all are bodies. So these other bodies exist at subtle levels, right? There's a thought body because you can experience it. You know you have an energy body because you experience energy. You know that you have a feeling body because you have feeling. But you can't see any of these. I don't know where they are. Well, so we say they are subtle bodies. They don't exist in the same dimension as the physical body. The physical body exists in the third dimension. These other subtle bodies exist in a different dimension. Now, there are seers who cognize that and they can tell you what dimension. I don't know. I don't have the direct perception of that, so I'm not going to pretend like I could know. But I do know that they exist in a different dimension, as do you. So you don't have to be a great seer in order to recognize that. It's just sort of like obvious. I know I have these experiences, but I don't see them anywhere. So they must be in a different dimension than the physical dimension. Well, then obviously we start to see, well, yeah, and my where is being? Because I know that I am, but this I amness I don't know where that is either. So, we can extend that. But to bring it back, we say this manas is said to exist between the navel and the heart, I think. So you can start to be interested in that, because what I'm proposing is we start with this sarvikalpa samadhi, as I'm using that term, where you just flash on your, what we call true nature, this undivided wholeness. And then we can next take the next step into like early stages of nirvikalpa samadhi by observing, watching for the next arising thought. Because what was interrupting before was the thought. The thought would come and then we got lost. And I think we can just understand thought so that we can reduce confusion. Understand thought is any mental impression. It doesn't matter whether it's in words or images or whatever, however you perceive it, but any mental impression, anything that registers mentally, that's what we're calling a thought. So it's proposed that actually has a location in the soma, let's say, in the subtle body, but the soma, as I've described in the in moving to stillness meetings, has dimensionality. It has 3 dimensions. So the soma is a subtle 3-dimensional being. That's confusing, but whatever. So this is the gross, what we see, the sensory body, what we can see, taste, touch, smell, and whatever else we can do. That we'll say the gross, it's the gross level. There's I think this is called stula something. I think it means gross level. But it's sensory, it's registered by the senses. That's how we perceive it. That's how we say that it exists. Then there's a subtle level. This is soma, what I'm calling a soma. Also has 3 dimensions. So you have a location from which you're perceiving, and then there's a location that's down that you would understand physically as being somewhere between the navel and the heart internally. So you start to maybe just bring your inner gaze there and watch for the next rising thought, so you can let go. And then you just watch for the next rising thought, and maybe you'll start to see something bubbling up. And as soon as you start to see it bubbling up, what happens is you start to see all of the churning of the wheel starting to take place, all the attachment that's going on, all the, oh, I don't know, is this good or is this bad? I think some of it might be bad. I've got to protect myself. Oh, I think some of it might be good. I think I've got to go grab onto it. So all the churning starts. So you're watching for the churning, and lo and behold, you can let go, because you start to notice, I don't want that. I'm peace. I'm wholeness. That's not mine. That doesn't apply to me. It's not for me to try and do something with. I'm not going to be harmed. What's here fundamentally is good. What's here fundamentally is bliss. There is nothing more attractive than this. There's nothing that I need to fear when I know this. So now, as soon as you have that experience, as soon as you can let go and then turn your attention so that you're watching for the next thought, and you start to see it bubbling up at a subtle level before it would otherwise have registered consciously, because normally it takes quite a long time before it registers consciously. But here we're noticing it at a very subtle level, and you start to notice the churning, and right away you start to notice, I don't want that. You don't go to war with it. You just simply recognize, oh, that's not mine. I am peace. The moment that happens, congratulations, nirvikalpa samadhi, unbroken by one thought. So now what about the next thought? Okay, so now you start to see where you can go with this, because at first you have no idea about this at all. You're just, I am this person, I'm this history, I am these problems, I am these thoughts. Oh my goodness. And then by some miracle, you have this experience of this glimpse of okayness. Think about it. This is something that is this experience that you have is the experience that people have historically written about, because these single flashes, like, they have no sarvikalpa samadhi, no samadhi of any kind, no self-awareness. And then a split second, and everything changes for them. Everything, I mean, so many reports of this. And so not only can we have that, that thing that changes people's lives. But we can actually have unbroken samadhi so that we can uh, uh, recognize that what it is that's interrupting is this subtle arising thing, and the churning, the attaching, the grasping to it. And as soon as I don't grasp, as soon as I don't do anything with it, as soon as I don't try to protect, as soon as I don't try to get it, it's nirvikalpa samadhi. So then, as I say, then the question is, what about the next thought? Well, maybe the next thought, you're lost again. Okay, so start over. I want to be clear, though, that this is a joyful experience. This is not a bad experience at all. There's nothing bad. And it's not the fears that we have, like this will be dull. Oh, but then I won't have any fun in life. Hey, look, tell the truth. You're not having that much fun in life with all the supposed fun you're having. So when our mind comes up with that one, you got to say, okay, mind, good try, but that's just not true. I'm not having that much fun. And by the way, let me just test it out again. You let go and you say, wow, really, truly, this is better. So like what could come, what, then it becomes like a game, these things start to arise and you're like, could that be better? Could that be better? Is that possible? Or could that hurt me? Could that really destroy this piece? Is that possible? And we start to see, sure enough, it's actually not possible. Every time that it seems that the piece is disturbed, when we look carefully, what we see is that thing didn't do it. I did. That thing that I was afraid of didn't cause the interruption of the recognition of the bliss. Instead, what happened was I reacted based on some idea, some impression, some conditioning that told me that this arising energy must at all costs be rejected. It must be kept away. There is no possibility of allowing it ever. This is suffering. Because the instant that I believe that, what am I doing? You check into your experience right now and notice what's happening. Because if you're not aware of that bliss, then what is it that's interfering? This is what we want to see. I thought we were going to, this is very practical. It's not exactly the practice that I thought we were going to be doing, but it's enormously practical. So you see that if there's some seeming interruption in the recognition of the bliss, notice what is the interruption, because the conditioning says, well, it's these things. It has labels for it, ideas. Even if it doesn't have words, it has some notion of it as something bad, something evil, something dark, something heavy, something oppressive, something, fill in the blank, but you've got some notion about it, something terrifying, something unacceptable. And because you believe that notion, then see, how do you know? You don't know, but how do you believe you know that that is true? You can't actually know that it's true, so you only believe that you know that it's true, and that belief is what? Look to your experience. I mean, if you've heard me talk about this ever in the last however many years now, then you already know the answer. It's the feeling. Now, how is that feeling produced? Or what is the actual substance of the feeling? we could say it's energy. So there's energy, because if you don't have a thought that tells you what it is, you don't know what it is, other than you could say, well, it seems to be energy, just to give some word to it. So you've got some notion that tells you this is something bad, something awful, something unbearable, something painful, right? Painful, uncomfortable. So you just check in your experience, and there's something that you're registering, believing this is painful, this is uncomfortable, this is unbearable, this is unacceptable, this is frightening, this is hurting me, this is going to kill me, whatever, something along those lines. But you don't know that that is true. That's an assumption that's being made, which obviously flatly rejects the possibility that what's actually here is fundamentally good. It says, no, 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 what's here is fundamentally bad. What's here is fundamentally out to get me. It's terrorizing me. It's hurting me. It's entirely evil. Has to be. So that's what the thought says. We don't know that it's true, but we believe we know it's true because of the feeling. Now, it becomes obviously vicious cycle. It's very cyclical, very circular, because the logic here is because, well, the thought says that it is, and the feeling proves that it is. Well, how do you know that the feeling proves it? Well, because the thought says so. You said, well, how do you know that the thought is true? Because of the feeling. I mean, look at your experience and see if that is not true, please let me know, because I really want to, if you know something that I don't about it, I want to know it, because to me, that is so very, very, very clear. And I've looked at it so much, and I have really looked at it very, very intensively. And I'm as certain as I can be at this point in my life of anything, which is not, I can't be very certain about much. My level of certainty about things is very small, very, very small. But of all the things that I have any degree of certainty about, this is one of them. One of the few that I have any inkling of certainty about, because it just seems so clear every time. There's a thought and there's a feeling, and they just go round and round trying to prove that one proves the other. So this is where we recognize I'm on the not so merry-go-round. And the mind keeps screaming, but there's no way off, because I can't let go, because if I did, it's going to get me. And you have to just tell the truth, which is, but I can't hold on anymore because it's too much. It's too painful. I can't do it. So I have to risk it. So then you choose to let go. And don't you find yet again that there's a fundamental goodness, that you're held, that when you let go, it doesn't all fall apart. It's like what we always fear, I think. If I let go, it's all going to fall apart. Well, actually, when you do let go, what you find directly is it doesn't fall apart. I fall apart, but it doesn't fall apart. And what a delight that is. Finally, I don't have to hold me together anymore. So we have now, we can just keep seeing. This is why those who, okay, well, I'll just complete that sequence of thought there, which is just to say that eventually what is promised to us is that there is a culmination which the nirvikalpa samadhi becomes what Ramana calls sahaja nirvikalpa samadhi, which is when the unbroken samadhi becomes truly unbroken. So it's not just like unbroken by some thoughts, it's unbroken. No thought no thought interrupts it, disturbs it. There's just a resting in this fundamental goodness, not my fundamental goodness, just fundamental goodness. Not my salvation, just fundamental goodness. Not my enlightenment, just fundamental goodness. Because it turns out all those other things that, my this and my that, and we're always so worried about me, my. That was the thing that was eating at us all along. That was the thing that we were that was what was there constantly screaming at us, but I'm gonna die. And what can be recognized is that it was never born. It really honestly never was born. Because it is true, it's unacceptable and terrifying to someone to die. It can't be acceptable for someone to die. Someone cannot accept that. I don't see how that's possible. But what can be recognized is that someone never was born. What a relief. Someone was never born, therefore the someone will never die. It's not that the someone is and the someone is immortal. No, it's that the someone never was. So that's what's promised. And what a relief that would be, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be nice not to be so concerned about yourself anymore? Holy cow. I mean, like, then what? I mean, the Buddhists, the Tibetan Buddhists tell us very clearly, well, the Mahayanas Buddhists do, at least they say, look, we discovered, Buddha discovered that then it's then you reverse it all. Instead of it being about me, it's about other. It's about a beautiful reality. It's about true service to the heart. So this is what's possible. I'm just so you can understand where this is going, and that it's possible for you. That it's not. I want you to see that there are steps, so that it doesn't have to be like I'll just hope that tomorrow will be different. You can start to see, well, wait a second, I actually have a choice in this. I can see what's possible and what seems to be interfering, and it's exactly what is needed in order to resolve this. I just have to look in the right way. I just have to look and know kind of what I'm looking at. So in a general sense, so I can kind of direct it in the right way so that I can succeed in this quickly, rather than who knows how long. But let it be quick. Let it be at the very least in this lifetime, if not today. But that we can see, okay, this is all that it is. This doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to be all these things. I don't have to, go to some exotic place, climb the Himalayas, and stand on my head and all these things. I mean, maybe there's a time and place for that. Maybe I'm not saying that's bad, but what a blessing that that's not necessary for you, that you don't have to do all those things. So, because you are in a very wonderful situation. I mean this sincerely. I mean, I know we all have many problems, and I don't really want to try to trivialize them, but at the same time, I do want to point out the truth, which is that you are in a very wonderful situation, and you want to make the most of it, because it's rare for people to receive this knowledge. It's very rare for people to receive this precision of clarity. And I can say that it's not coming from me. I mean, this is coming from truth. But I know, because I have been seeking very intensely for a long time in my life, that this level of precision and clarity is enormously rare. And I hope my goal, my vision is that I don't want this knowledge to have to be rare. I don't believe that it has to be only for those people who've climbed the Himalayas and stood on their heads for 10 years, because frankly, we don't have time for that. In case you haven't noticed, because nobody's going to do that. But you and me and all these other people, right? Because then doesn't it break your heart to see these people? So I know that it's possible for us to restore beauty to our worlds, and to give generously of goodness to those in need, in a way that genuinely makes this world heaven on earth. Not because of some savior, not because of some uh, leader, not because of any of that, but because we finally are willing to receive that goodness, and then just naturally to share that with others. So my request to you is that you accept that for yourself, and then accept it for others. Because as long as our focus is on ourselves, it has to be for a while. I understand that. So I'm not suggesting that it's like bad for you to care for yourself. It's not bad. It's needed, because I heard somebody describe a meeting that the Dalai Lama had with, and I don't know how long ago this was. It must have been quite a few. It must have been many years ago, because I think the Dalai Lama really, in most of my lifetime, has been very in touch with the with the people of the world. But in this story, he was having this meeting with these people who were like, I don't know, businessmen and politicians and, like, I don't know, educators. So I don't remember who it was. It was like some, you know, higher tiers of society. And so obviously fairly successful according to our standards. And the Dalai Lama is talking, and he's saying something about how we are he's saying, we have these tendencies towards inflation and self-inflation, and so we have this knowledge in order to help us to balance that so that that doesn't become a problem. And at some point, somebody asks a question and they say, okay, I understand all of that, but he says, but what about low self-esteem? And the Dalai Lama apparently was like, what? Because he's like, his English wasn't that great. So it's like, I don't know this thing you're speaking of, this low self-esteem. What is this? I said, like, ask the translator. And then the translator's asking for clarification, and they're going back and forth, between the translator. And finally, the Dalai Lama, he says, he's like, no, I think I understand about this low self-esteem. He says, no, it must be very rare. It's like, we're not going to talk about that, because it's like, that's not for most people. That must be for very few people. And they're like, no. And it's like, oh, it must just be for you. And the guy says, wait a second, hold on. Is there anybody else in this room who experiences low self-esteem? And apparently everybody's hand went up. So the Dalai Lama was like, oh, this is the thing. So we have low self-esteem. We need to help ourselves. So having the focus on ourselves is needed and good, because if we can't ourselves restore wholeness, then what hope is there for the world? So yes, we have to do that. But what I'm suggesting is, and then see that has a limit. Like, at what point are you going to be satisfied with that? Like, when will it be enough for you? Because I'll tell you honestly, it's never been enough for me. Doesn't matter how good it is, never enough for me. The me is insatiable. So if it's out of balance in a certain way, we need to bring it in better into balance. So if we are suffering from many difficulties and problems, and we're afraid for ourselves, for our safety and well-being and capability, that we feel like, no, I can't, I'm not able, I don't have enough, I'm not well enough, I'm not this thing, that thing, and the other, then yeah, we need to restore that wholeness. And I'm suggesting, start to entertain the notion that you can, and that these things that you think are still obstacles maybe are not the obstacles that you think they are. Because, and I'm not saying that, it's really important to understand, one of the fundamental principles in Bliss Techniques is gentleness. So when I say these things, it's in the context of gentleness. It's not about masochism. It's not about self-sacrifice in that masochistic way, because that would be incorrect. That would be self-harm, and therefore that would be harm to other. So that is definitely not what is intended when I say these things. And I say that because I understand that maybe they could be misunderstood in that way. When I say to understand that the me is insatiable, and that these things that are imagined or thought to be the obstacles or the interference may not be, I am not at all suggesting that you should just try to power through and go volunteer for some charitable organization, even though you can barely take care of yourself and you're going to quite possibly fall over dead. That wouldn't be the right thing at all. And I'm not even suggesting that volunteering for charitable organizations is the right thing for you, or even for most people. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that just even within your own what you consider to be your own experience, you can start to be more generous and giving to others. That you can start to have cultivate compassion for others, so that you can notice how quick you are to be fearful of others. You don't have to go hugging everybody. I'm not saying that that's a good idea. Probably is a terrible idea. So that's not at all what I'm suggesting. But I am saying just notice the fear that you have of other people. Notice um, the distance that you create between yourself and others, just within your own mind, and start to entertain generosity toward others just within your own experience. So start to see that this is really powerful. And I guess we're not going to do, so I take it all back. We're not doing any Ujjayi Pranayama today. We'll do that next week. But what I will say is that this is like maybe kind of a very gentle, light introduction to this practice of Tonglen that we'll be covering after we complete Ujjayi Pranayama. But it's a very good practice to be doing through the day. And so we won't, this isn't even really, I won't even suggest that it will be a Tonglen practice so much as more like a metta bhavana in a sense, just to extend loving kindness to all being. And so you can make it a pranayama. So a pranayama is it's a practice that controls or moves energy, the prana. So breath is always a pranayama because the breath is a movement of energy. It's not all pranayama is tied to the breath, but in a sense, any practice of awareness on the breath is pranayama. It's like not all rectangles are squares, but all squares are rectangles, kind of thing. And so the practice that I'll suggest is a simple pranayama. It's a very gentle pranayama. It's just with the natural breath. You don't need to control any other aspect of the breath other than you just want to have the intention that the breath is relaxed and comfortable and smooth. So, but you're not otherwise trying to do anything like we do with Ujjayi Pranayama, where we articulate the ribs and we move the ribs in a certain way, and the Jalandhara Bandha and all that. We don't, in this pranayama, we don't do any of that. It's just natural breathing. But obviously we want to have the intention that as we're aware of the breath, we allow the breath to be smooth and gentle and comfortable through the nose, preferably. And so you're aware of the inhalation and you're aware of the exhalation. And on the inhalation, you can just have a sense of just breathing in the cosmic energy, or breathing in nature, or breathing in life, breathing in general goodness, whatever works for you. Just some sense that as you're inhaling gently, naturally, effortlessly, this goodness, life, energy. And then on the exhalation, you are intending to bless from yourself. And this is, and the blessing can be directed at whomever or whatever or wherever you would like. So that you could choose, like, for example, maybe if you're finding that you're feeling angry and it's directed at somebody, then it would be excellent to do this with the intention of blessing that person. So the blessing is extended from you to that person. So it's just internal. It's not, you don't have to call the person and tell them. They don't have to be standing in front of you. Wherever you are, wherever they are, they could be long gone. It doesn't matter. You're just internally, you inhale life, goodness, energy, and you exhale a blessing from yourself to them. Genuine blessing, genuine intention of loving kindness. May they be happy. May they be at peace. May they know goodness. May they be blessed. May they find comfort. May they have the support that they need. And your intention, only you can know. You'll get the benefit to the extent that you're willing to be totally sincere, So you just have that intention, and it can be maybe a little challenging for some people some of the time, but it's good. So if you find that there's anybody who you really just, no, I'm not going to do it, then okay. I mean, that's hurting you. So I say, okay, not like that's actually okay. But I mean, in that case, if you have that level of resistance to it, it will be better that you, I would say, focus on blessing those who you are willing to bless. But be willing to challenge yourself and extend the blessing to those who you are having some resistance to blessing because you're holding some kind of resentment or whatever, or fear or hostility or whatever may be the case. So be willing to challenge yourself in that way. So this can be really a wonderful, excellent thing, because honestly, you'll find that a lot of the time you can just you will forget to just be in samadhi. I mean, it happens. We're like, what am I supposed to be doing? I don't know. And we think about things. And, an hour later, we're like, well, what have I been doing? So this is a nice thing that you can do when you're like, because whatever reason, we find it really challenging just to rest in samadhi. So, but we find it less challenging, maybe, to do something like this kind of pranayama. So maybe because we like to be able to give our attention to something. So that's really the difference. Is in samadhi, there's no one giving attention to something. There's just awareness. And but we're very habituated to giving our attention to something, but we're indiscriminate about what we give our attention to. And I'm just suggesting that this practice helps you to be more conscious of what you're giving your attention to. So you choose, I do this because, hey, you're breathing all the time. So all you're doing then is just putting your attention on that breath, and then you're coupling that with a positive intention. So it's actually helping you. It's making your life better. It's producing positive changes in your nervous system, in your body, in your thinking, in your feeling, in your energy. All of this is benefiting from this practice versus the what you would be doing otherwise, which would almost inevitably end up being, like anxious thinking or worry or rumination or whatever. So here, or like watching TV or whatever, so you can do, and you could, you could watch TV if you want, if you really want to. I don't know why you would, but if you really wanted to, you could, and that would be okay. But you could do this while you're watching TV. You could do it while you're driving. You could do it while you're making tea, whatever you're doing, you can do this, and you just see, wow, this is better. This is better than the other things I could be doing, because here my life actually gets better. I'm not carrying around all this baggage all the time, all these resentments and fears and worries and things. I can just bless. It's what really wonderful. So hopefully that's clear. And I encourage you to do your daily practice formally, because the daily practice, which your present daily practice, if you're doing as I'm suggesting, would be, you don't need to do this, but my suggestion would be that you do 5 to 10 minutes or less, but no more than 10 minutes of Ujjayi Pranayama, lying down, with all the supports that will help you in that, using the guidance that I've provided, remembering to be gentle, should be pleasurable, and not causing strain or discomfort, and then follow that with 1 to 2 minutes of just resting deeply. And you can practice nirvikalpa samadhi if you find that useful, so that you can use the instruction given today. You just are watching for the arising thought, and as soon as you recognize that subtle arising thought and the churning of the grasping, you can let go. And the reason doing the formal practice is, I think, very good for many reasons. So I really encourage you to do it. If you don't do the formal practice, then you will be cheating yourself. To make that easier and better for yourself, I would further encourage you to do it at the same time every day, because that will establish a rhythm that will start to just run on its own, so that you don't have to be trying. It takes a while, but it will establish itself if you commit to that. So I encourage that. It will be helpful to you if you are willing to do it and you're able to do it. Also, I encourage doing having this other practice that you can do through the day, whatever that may be. I'm suggesting this week this kind of metta bhavana style practice, a pranayama, that you can be doing throughout the day whenever you're not. Sometimes your attention does need to go to something else, and that's fine. I'm not saying that you can't connect with your family. You're just tuning them out. They're talking to you and you're just no, you can connect with them. You can you have to give your attention to something requires that kind of focus. Fine. Don't try to operate heavy machinery, maybe, unless you could do it while driving, as long as you're a skillful driver. But if you start getting too blissed out, then maybe don't. But be safe, and know yourself. But the point is, this will be, you will find that this will support you in a better life. It will support you in being happier and healthier. So it's good in that sense. Any objections that come up, that will come up in your mind, because sometimes they do, just ask, just inquire into them. Just say, is that actually true? Because sometimes it might be, and most of the time it won't be. But you want to just see it clearly, because once you see it clearly, you'll do what is clear, because you want what is best. And when what is best is clear, you choose that. I mean, it's not hard once you know. So I hope that makes sense. So I think that covers everything except for the things that I never say, because we're way over time. I will say, for anybody who actually watches the YouTube video to the end here, first of all, I appreciate you, because, and all of you who are here live, because as I said, sharing this knowledge is, I'm sharing this knowledge with you, because I want it to make your life better, and B, because I want you to also, through actually living and knowing directly the truth of this knowledge in your own life, experiencing the benefits of it for yourself, and being able to directly cognize it for yourself, so that you're not just repeating something that somebody else said, but you're actually able to describe your own experience. Then I want you to share that with other people. I'm not saying that you need to start, blogging and putting stuff on YouTube and whatever. I'm saying, however that is for you, whatever that is, in whatever way, whatever is natural and authentic and true for you. It might be just with your cat. It might be with your children, or your parents, or your friend, or your whoever. But I want you to share it, because I want this knowledge to be accessible to people, because everybody needs it. And so please, like, really, really change your life, change your perception, change your experience, and recognize what is that what is fundamentally good. And that's really what I want for you. And I know that that's possible, not in a long time, in a short time. Then you can really know and trust that. And then you can, as I've kind of challenged you a little bit to today, then you can start to realize, well, there's still actually kind of, there's no suffering anymore. There's no suffering, and there's no actual sense of lack or need, but there's actually like a joyful, creative desire to express goodness. So that, how does that, you can't just be like trying to fill yourself anymore. Then you realize, no, I'm so full. Let me authentically give this. And so I really believe that is the only way to make this world beautiful. I mean, the world is what the world is neither inherently beautiful or not beautiful, but for us to begin to perceive it as beautiful, that seems clearly the way, because otherwise we're waiting for something that's not going to happen. So that's my hope and invitation to you. And the other thing I want to just mention briefly is that I am working on some updates to my website, which are long overdue, but it took me a long time to realize what I really want to do and how I want to put it together and present it. And I appreciate everybody who's trying to make sense of all the kind of stuff that I've put out over the years, because it's really kind of a big jumble, but I feel like it's getting more coherent now. So I'm starting two things that I will be launching soon, and I'll let you know when they're ready, but I hope within a week. Changes to the website. One is that I'm putting together a new course. This course will be by donation, which is not to say that it is not valuable by any stretch of the imagination. It is the most valuable thing that I know of. But rather that I want, it's important to me that it is available to everybody, regardless of ability to pay. And so that will be ready soon. And that's going to, presently it's called Bliss Techniques. And it will be a continual work in progress, I think. But as I keep adding new content and refining it, but as it is right now, for those who are here live, you'll remember that recently I shared with you a blog post that was fairly long, and it was the start of this project, this course that I hadn't realized at that time was a course. So a lot of that content is now presented in a course, which I think is much easier to access and make sense of, and it's better organized and better, you'll be able to find your way through it, I think, easier. And so it's going to be in many lessons. There'll be various themes, but the general idea is presenting the kind of general idea that I described here in this meeting as kind of context. And then what are the specific, understanding that here we have some hopefully kind of clear-ish path of what's available, where we recognize, okay, I can glimpse Samadhi, and then what's told to me by Ramana is that there is this true reality of sahaja nirvikalpa samadhi, and I can see, okay, how does that, what are the steps, and I can actually take action on that. And I'm proposing to you in these videos or in these meetings, some of the things that I'm saying can be supportive of that. But it also, I think, will be very helpful if it can be presented in a written format that can be referenced easily, rather than having to go through a video. And remember which video was that in, and where in the video, and nobody's going to do that. So I think this will be much more helpful. That way, important principles can be spelled out and clearly, so that you can have a complete list of them that you can refer to, that will be helpful. And then the specific practices or techniques that I'm proposing are most supportive in helping us to take that journey. Because as I've said, we struggle to be able to just keep awareness of self, or awareness of awareness, because that's not an object, and we have a tendency, a habit of wanting to focus on objects. So the practices are those things which allow us to have our attention on objects, but which support us in working out the things that seem to be interfering with the sahaja nirvikalpa samadhi. In other words, like we say, well, I'm just so distracted by bodily sensations. I just feel so much discomfort all the time. Okay, what are the things that we can do that will help with that? Or if we say, oh, but I'm just so worried and anxious all the time. That's the thing that's really bothering me, that I'm struggling with. Okay, well, here are some techniques specifically that can support you in resolving that. Or you say, whatever may be the case. And then other supportive things that I want to include in there will be sections on lifestyle, diet, nutrition, things of that nature that I think nothing dogmatic. I mean, I hope you don't perceive me as dogmatic, because I don't, in my heart, I don't want to be dogmatic. So I don't intend for any of it to be dogmatic, but things that I believe can be helpful and supportive, depending on what are the challenges that a person is facing, because sometimes people are facing like difficulty eating. That's a very different difficulty than somebody who is not having that problem, but they're having, like, I don't know, they have no trouble eating, but they're having trouble eliminating. I don't know, they have like different problems. Maybe you have both those problems at the same time, but you could have a lot of different problems. And so we want to look at those in different ways, depending, because there's not really a one size fits all. Like if somebody's starving, they need to eat. It doesn't matter really. Like if you're like, no, I won't eat that because it's not organic, but you're starving. I'm sorry, that's not the thing that you should be worried about at that moment. You need to eat. And but on the other hand, if you're not starving, then you can afford to, and perhaps should be, more discriminating about what you eat. But then, without that becoming a problem, without that being like a new neurosis. So a lot of things that I know can be very supportive for people, and I want to provide all of that in a way that will be most accessible, most helpful. And I think I believe that this is the format that's going to do that. And then eventually, once that's really well developed, perhaps we can publish it as a book, so that it can also be available in that way. And okay, so that's one thing. And then the other thing that I'm also going to be launching, probably at the same time, is an online community. So I want to have better people post questions on YouTube videos, and they send me emails, and I get, and we have this messenger group and all, and I even at one point tried having a Facebook group, a lot of different things. I think that this online community resolves all of those things. It's one place that allows for questions and answers. It allows for announcements. It allows for publishing certain material that's I think would be valuable to people who are engaged and sincere in the work. Maybe not make so much sense for people who are not engaged with the work, because they won't be familiar with the terminology or whatever. So this, I think, will allow for a deeper experience for everybody, because we won't have to always be covering the same things. We can kind of define some things, have those there that everybody can familiarize themselves with, so we all can speak the same language. And then we can look at things deeper, like today, because we can define like the use of samadhi, sarvikalpa samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi, sahaja nirvikalpa samadhi. I mean, they're like kind of complex words. I understand. Maybe we can simplify them, but having those terms, I think, simplifies things, because now we can all know maybe what's being referred to. But in public, meetings, not necessarily always appropriate to use those terms because it like excludes a lot of people. But if we don't have that shared terminology, then it makes it harder for us to go deeper. So I think this community can help with that, and also allow for more of the actual community of sangha, because in Buddhist terms they talk these three jewels. I do apologize, and I'm going really long, but I hope that you're finding it valuable. The three jewels are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So Buddha is, we can just in simple terms, you don't have to, Buddhist scholars will probably differ, but just for our purposes, we could say Buddha is teacher, Dharma is teaching, Sangha is community. So these are the three jewels. They're like the three things that we want in this lifetime. Without these three things, what do you have? You have nothing. You're just suffering. It's only when you have a teacher, it doesn't have to be some person, but the way through which the teaching comes. You have to have a way through which the teaching comes, otherwise it can't come, can't arrive in some other way. The teacher could be a book, but without the vehicle, without the teacher, there's no teaching for you. So you have to have a teacher. There has to be a teaching, which is the way, right? I mean, the teaching shows you the way, because without the way, we don't know. Without the way, we're just like, oh my goodness, it's infinity any which way. I don't know, if I go that way, I might be getting, I'm more likely to get further away from the truth if I go that way than I am if I just stay here, actually. So we just kind of stay here because we don't have a way. So we have to have a way. And then, so I hope to provide a way. That's my ambition, is to try and provide an accessible, coherent way for people like us, people who live the way that we live in this time and age with access to the internet. And because it's not, like a lot of these teachings, which are so valuable, so essential for human life, but the only context in which we normally see them is so foreign to us, we can't even begin to connect with them, because we think of Buddhists and we think of people in robes with shaved heads who are monks and nuns. At least I do. And I'm like, that's not who I am. So how, and they're talking about, oh my goodness, you think my terms are complicated? Holy cow, so many terms. And we don't know what any of them mean. So having a way that is our way, a way that works for us, is an essential thing in this life. Otherwise, again, we're lost. And then we're told the other thing, because in case, if we didn't know this, then we would still be lost. We'd be clinging to the teacher and the teaching, thinking this is it, but we would be missing the third ingredient, which is the community. So having community that around the same teaching is, we're told, important. And so I think that this online community also helps to address that, because it's important that all of us can have that community so that we can share share experience, ask questions, start to actually learn that we can open up, we can trust in the inherent goodness, because otherwise we're so guarded. Like, we have to open up to the community. I'm not saying like this one online community is the community. It's an expression of the community. But through that opening, we start to open to the greater whole. And then just like this bhavana, metta bhavana that I'm proposing today, does much the same. So you can look for that. I will be announcing that as soon as that's available. But I'm happy about it. I think that this will be a big improvement. Last thing, and by now the only people who are left are the people who are here live. And bless you all, because I believe I know all of you have generously donated financially and in many other ways over these years, and it means a lot to me, and I appreciate it very much. And it's what allows for this work to develop and to become available to people. So thank you very much for that. And for anybody who stays to the very end on YouTube, please know that you too can contribute financially, and it means a lot to me if it comes from your heart. And you can do that at joeylott.com/give, and I'll maybe remember to put a link to that in the description on YouTube, but probably not. So I'll end this recording now. Thank you very much.